Everyone knows about Roswell in 1947, but 50 years earlier, something just as strange swept across America. Dozens of towns reported glowing airships, cigar-shaped crafts with blinding spotlights. Farmers, sheriffs, even judges swore they saw them. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the airships vanished without a trace. Chapter 1: Strange Lights in the Sky. It's the spring of 1897. The nights are cold across Texas and California. The land is vast, empty, and quiet, broken only by the barking of dogs or the wind through the plains. But then, strange lights appear in the sky. Farmers glance up from their porches, sheriffs stop in their tracks, and families gather in silence. Hovering above them are glowing ships, enormous, cigar-shaped, gliding against the wind. Bright beams sweep across fields like spotlights. And these sightings aren't whispered rumors. They're reported in newspapers. The Dallas Morning News, the Houston Post, the Sacramento Bee. All across America, headlines scream about mysterious airships. The details are chilling. Witnesses describe propellers, rudders, even giant wings, with uncanny precision. Some even claim they heard voices drifting down from above, men shouting in English, others in strange mechanical tones. This is 1897. The Wright Brothers won't fly at Kitty Hawk for another 6 years. The first powered airplane hasn't even been invented. So how are farmers in the middle of nowhere describing technical machines in the sky? The reports multiply. In one case, a sheriff in Texas swears he saw a ship land in a field. The pilots asked for water, then took off again, vanishing into the clouds. In another, a group of miners claimed they were blinded by a searchlight so powerful it lit up the valley like day. Newspapers print these accounts in stunning detail. They even sketch diagrams of the crafts, complete with measurements. The drawings look eerily like something out of science fiction, except they're being presented as fact. And here's where the mystery deepens. Why do so many articles sound technical? Why do they use engineering terms that ordinary farmers in 1897 shouldn't even know? Propulsion, elevators, metallic hulls. Some historians whisper that this was no accident, that the press may have been fed descriptions to seed an idea in the public mind. The United States was secretly developing advanced flying machines. But why in 1897? One theory points to the Spanish-American War, just 1 year later. The U.S. military was experimenting with balloons, gliders, and propulsion systems. Could these airships have been an early weapons program? A prototype for aerial surveillance before the world even knew what airplanes were? If so, the cover story worked perfectly. Most readers laughed off the reports as tall tales or hoaxes. Others blamed hysteria, the same way people explained away witch sightings centuries earlier. By the time the stories faded, no one knew what to believe. Yet, some details refused to die. Why did so many witnesses, scattered across thousands of miles, describe the same craft? Long, metallic, with powerful searchlights? Why did the reports come night after night, for months on end, before vanishing suddenly as if someone flipped a switch? And most importantly, if these were truly experimental U.S. airships, why are there no records? No patents, no blueprints, no wreckage, nothing. It's as if they never existed, or as if someone wanted them erased from history. The mystery of the airships had only just begun, and what came next would be even stranger. Chapter 2: The Aurora Crash, Texas. It's a Sunday morning in April 1897. The small farming town of Aurora, Texas, is just waking up. Church bells ring, families gather on porches. Then, a blinding flash cuts across the sky. A glowing object, moving fast, trailing smoke. Moments later, an explosion. The ground shakes, windows rattle. The thing crashes into a windmill on Judge Proctor's farm. Neighbors rush to the scene. What they find is unlike anything they've ever seen. The wreckage is scattered across the fields. Twisted metal, unlike any farm equipment. Shards that shimmer strangely in the sunlight. Some say the material is impossibly light, almost paper thin, yet strong as steel. And then, the body, not a cow, not a man. A small figure pulled from the wreckage. Reports describe it as Not of this world. Humanoid, but frail. Its skin burned. Its eyes too large. The townsfolk gather around in silence. The preacher says it deserves a Christian burial. They dig a grave in the local cemetery. The strange body is lowered into the earth. A funeral is held. And then, the story spreads. The Dallas Morning News prints an article. Other papers pick it up. Soon the Aurora airship crash is headline news. Did a flying machine from another world really crash in a Texas farm town? Or was this a hoax, a desperate attempt by a dying town to draw attention and survive? Aurora was struggling. Crops had failed, businesses were closing, disease had swept through. Some historians argue the crash story was nothing more than a publicity stunt, invented to sell newspapers and lure settlers. But if it was all fake, why do so many details refuse to go away? Locals swore they saw the wreckage. Children claimed to have played with pieces of the strange metal. The cemetery's pastor kept quiet for years, but admitted there had been a burial of something unusual. And then comes the strangest part. Decades later, in the 1940s and 1950s, new witnesses speak up. They say government men came to Aurora at night, they dug into the cemetery, they removed the grave marker, and soon the headstone for the so-called alien pilot was gone, vanished. When modern investigators search the cemetery with ground-penetrating radar, they find something, a small coffin-sized anomaly beneath the soil. But when they try to dig, the Cemetery Association blocks them. The truth remains sealed underground. So what really happened in Aurora? Did the townsfolk actually bury an extraterrestrial? Or were they burying their own hopes for survival in the middle of a dying town? Why did supposed government agents care so much decades later that they may have removed the remains? If it was all a hoax, why bother? Unless the wreckage and the body really were what the newspapers claimed, a visitor from somewhere else. The Aurora crash remains one of the earliest, most famous UFO stories in American history. A moment when the skies seemed to touch down on Earth, and it left behind a grave, one that, to this day, no one is allowed to open. Chapter 3. Inventors in the Shadows. It's the late 1800s. America is booming. Factories roar. Oil barons grow rich. The Gilded Age has given rise to industrial giants, men with fortunes that can move governments. And in the shadows, whispers spread about something else, something stranger. Flying machines. Not just the dreams of eccentrics, but rumors of real prototypes tested in the night skies of rural America. Some point to Alexander Graham Bell, the father of the telephone. He was obsessed with aeronautics, quietly funding projects to lift man off the ground. Others point to Nikola Tesla, the brilliant, eccentric inventor who spoke openly about wireless energy and propulsion that sounded more like science fiction than science. But what if it wasn't just individuals? Some researchers claim secret syndicates of inventors formed underground networks, groups of engineers, mechanics, and wealthy backers who pooled their knowledge to build experimental airships. They didn't announce it to the world. They tested them in silence, far from prying eyes over the farmlands of Texas and the plains of the Midwest. That could explain the 1897 sightings. Farmers describing cigar-shaped ships with propellers, sheriffs swearing they saw men step out of crafts that rose back into the sky. The uncanny technical detail in newspaper reports suddenly makes sense, if someone was actually building these machines. But then comes the darker theory. What if those inventors weren't just dreamers chasing the sky? What if they were funded? Did syndicates of inventors secretly build and fly these crafts? Or was the entire inventor theory just a cover for something stranger? Behind the scenes, robber barons were locked in brutal wars for power. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan. Men who controlled oil, steel, and railroads. Men who were already reshaping the world with technology and money. What if they saw flight not as science, but as a weapon? Imagine being able to spy from the sky, or drop explosives on rivals, control the air before anyone else even realized it could be done. Some conspiracy theorists whisper that these magnates quietly bankrolled experiments in secret hangars, that the mysterious airships weren't alien at all, but the first prototypes of an American empire to come. The evidence? Thin, but strange. A handful of patents filed in the late 1800s for flying machines eerily similar to the crafts people reported. Letters between wealthy industrialists hinting at projects too advanced for the public eye. Newspaper articles that describe mysterious strangers visiting small towns, offering farmers money to stay quiet about what they saw. And yet the story refuses to line up neatly. If robber barons were truly funding secret airships, why did they vanish without a trace? Why no surviving blueprints, no hangars, no working models in museums? Unless they were hidden, buried in archives, destroyed to erase evidence, or absorbed directly into early government research. Were the robber barons really behind this shadowy fleet, or does the inventor theory itself serve as a smokescreen designed to distract from something more unearthly? By the spring of 1897, the sightings continued. The ships grew bolder. Witnesses claimed to see crews waving from the decks. Some described figures in odd uniforms, speaking in strange languages. The question lingered, were these men, or something else disguised as men? The lights in the sky were no longer just curiosities. They were becoming confrontations, and what happened next would blur the line between eccentric invention and the unknown. Chapter 4: Encounters with the Unknown. Across the American heartland, the airship mystery is growing stranger. At first, people only saw lights in the sky, distant, silent, glowing. But soon the stories shift. Now it isn't just lights, it's encounters, face to face. Eyewitnesses begin describing the pilots of these ships. Men in uniforms no one recognizes. Some wear dark coats with brass buttons, others strange helmets. One farmer swears he spoke to a crew who claimed they were navigators from another continent. Another insists the pilots spoke in a language he had never heard before. Guttural, mechanical, inhuman. And these aren't the ramblings of a single drunk in a saloon. Sheriffs, judges, respected townsfolk report the same thing. In Merkel, Texas, a group of locals see an airship land in a pasture. They approach cautiously. The crew waves at them. And then, as if spooked, the craft lifts off into the night, its spotlight sweeping the ground. In Arkansas, a farmer claims the pilots asked him for supplies, steel, oil, and a strange request: gallons of sulfur. Why sulfur? The detail unsettles researchers. Some say it was fuel for a bizarre propulsion system. Others whisper darker theories. Sulfur as a connection to folklore, demons, and the smell of brimstone. Then there are the explanations given by the pilots themselves. One told a man he was working on a new invention that would revolutionize transportation. Another said he was part of a secret syndicate, testing prototypes. A third simply smiled and said, "You wouldn't understand." Were these pilots just eccentric inventors hiding their identities, or disguises for something not human at all? The encounters grow bolder. A Texas judge swears he shook hands with a pilot. He describes him as pale, sharp-featured, with an odd accent. When asked where he came from, the man laughed. "From everywhere," he said. Newspapers print the stories. Some dismiss them as hoaxes. Others present them with alarming seriousness. And yet, the details keep repeating. The ships are almost always cigar-shaped. They almost always carry blinding spotlights that sweep the ground like giant eyes. They move silently, sometimes against the wind. The same descriptions, across thousands of miles. Why do these accounts sound identical to UFO sightings that would erupt half a century later? Cigar-shaped crafts, blinding lights, strange beings speaking in alien tongues. Was the UFO phenomenon really born in 1947 with Roswell? Or was it already here in 1897? The deeper you dig, the more unsettling it becomes. Some witnesses insist the pilots weren't human at all. They describe faces too long, eyes too large, voices too cold. One woman faints after claiming she locked eyes with a figure who wasn't of this earth. Others claim the opposite, that they were most certainly men, but men who acted like they were under orders not to reveal their true purpose. One reporter even hints that he was warned to stop asking questions. The encounters leave only questions. If these were inventors, why hide in the night? Why not unveil their miracle machines to the world? And if they weren't inventors at all, then what were they? By summer, the sightings would escalate further. Lights in the sky, strange voices in the fields, reports piling higher. The mystery was no longer distant. It was close, too close, and it was beginning to feel like the pilots weren't just passing through. They were watching. Chapter 5: Suppression and Cover-Ups. By the spring of 1897, the sightings are everywhere. Sheriffs write affidavits, judges swear to what they saw. Entire towns claim to have watched glowing ships drift overhead. And then, silence. Newspapers that once ran bold front-page stories suddenly pull back. Articles vanish from archives. Retractions appear with no explanation. A sheriff in rural Texas, once adamant about what he saw, refuses to speak again. A reporter in Kansas City is reassigned after digging too deeply. The editor of a paper in Iowa receives a telegram warning him to drop the story. Days later, his coverage stops entirely. It's as if someone, or something, wanted the mystery erased. The official reason? Hoaxes, mass hysteria, overactive imaginations. That's what the papers say. But locals whisper a different story. Men in dark suits arriving unannounced, government officials confiscating notes, witnesses suddenly changing their accounts after quiet visits. Did the U.S. government intervene, not to calm panic, but to seize the technology for itself? After all, this is 1897. The Spanish-American War is just around the corner. America is rising as a global power. Wouldn't flying machines, decades ahead of their time, be worth suppressing, worth stealing, worth hiding? Some historians believe that's exactly what happened. They point to the sudden creation of aviation clubs across the Midwest. Officially, these groups were gatherings of enthusiasts, hobbyists dreaming of the day man might fly. But intelligence historians argue they were something else. They were fronts, secret networks funded quietly by industrialists and perhaps even the military. Cover operations where real experiments could be hidden in plain sight. Were these clubs simply harmless dreamers sketching blueprints, or covert organizations designed to mass surveillance experiments no one was meant to know about? The pattern is chilling. A witness in Nebraska describes seeing an airship land in a field. Days later, the local paper runs his account, then retracts it. The man himself later denies ever saying it, despite neighbors swearing otherwise. In Missouri, a group of farmers discover strange debris after a crash. They keep fragments of metal, describing it as light and strong. Weeks later, the debris is gone. No explanation. Some claim government agents came at night and took everything. And in Aurora, Texas, the site of the alleged crash and burial, the headstone for the alien pilot disappears decades later. Cemetery records vanish. Coincidence or deliberate erasure? By the time the airship wave ends in mid-1897, the silence is deafening. No inventor comes forward, no craft is unveiled. The newspapers stop reporting. It's as though the entire phenomenon is swallowed by the earth. But the rumors linger. In the 1940s, as America's intelligence community grows in the shadow of World War II, researchers uncover curious files. Some aviation clubs are listed as associated entities with government surveillance programs. Technology appears in military blueprints that seems years ahead of its time. Where did it come from? Did those strange airships of 1897 simply vanish? Or were they absorbed into the secret history of American intelligence? The official story is silence. The unofficial story is cover-up. And the truth, whatever it is, remains locked away in archives the public will never see. The mystery of 1897 is buried not only in fields and cemeteries, but in vanished records, sealed files, and the shadows of history itself. Chapter 6: Echoes of the Future. By the summer of 1897, the skies go dark. For months, Americans had looked up in wonder and fear. Strange airships gliding overhead, spotlights sweeping the fields, crews speaking in tongues. And then, just as suddenly as it began, nothing. The reports stop. No more headlines. No more affidavits. The airships vanish without a trace. At first, people expect the sightings to return. A new wave, another crash, another late-night encounter. But weeks pass, then months, then years. Silence. It's as if the airships had never existed. But the silence only makes the questions louder. If these were human inventions, where did they go? Why did no inventor step forward? No prototypes, no patents, no blueprints, nothing. The Wright brothers would fly 6 years later, a flimsy wooden plane sputtering a few feet off the ground. How could America leap from mysterious cigar-shaped ships in 1897 back to fragile gliders in 1903? It doesn't make sense, unless the airships weren't inventions at all. Some researchers argue the 1897 wave was the result of mass hysteria. Stories, feeding stories, newspapers chasing sensational headlines. But even hysteria can't explain the identical details across thousands of miles. The cigar-shaped crafts, the blinding lights, the mysterious pilots. Those same details will appear again, decades later. In 1947, a rancher near Roswell, New Mexico, reports wreckage from the sky. Metallic shards, impossibly light, strangely strong. Eyewitnesses describe bodies, not quite human. It's Aurora all over again. In the 1950s, pilots report glowing discs and cigar-shaped crafts pacing their planes. In the 1960s, entire towns describe blinding spotlights descending from above. The language changes, UFOs, flying saucers, but the descriptions are eerily familiar. Was 1897 the beginning of the modern UFO era? Not a myth, but the first chapter of a phenomenon that has been with us all along? UFO researchers certainly think so. They argue that the 1897 mystery wasn't hysteria, but contact. That whoever, or whatever, was in those ships wasn't inventing flight. They were visiting, testing, watching, and then when the time came, they disappeared back into the shadows. Skeptics dismiss this. They say the lack of evidence proves it was all a hoax, but believers point to the pattern. Every few decades, the phenomenon reemerges. A crash here, a sighting there, a wave of reports that suddenly stops. The cycle never ends. So what really happened in 1897? Was it a secret American weapons program, buried under government cover-ups? An eccentric syndicate of inventors, too far ahead of their time? Or was it something else entirely? A presence that slips in and out of history, leaving just enough behind to terrify and confuse. The mystery of the great airships didn't die in 1897. It simply went silent, waiting. And if UFO researchers are right, the lights in the sky were never gone. They've been here all along, watching.